18th of the 7th, 2025. The time is 20 minutes to 11. That means, of course, there are very many F1 centric threads at which we need to put. I'm going to go scorched earth, turncoat, Judas Iscariot settings on one of the drivers that I love, Carlos Sainz. He's come out and he's had something to say on Instagram, and I disagree with it. We will dissect for that. We'll talk about Ferrari upgrades, disagreement in the ranks as far as Lewis Hamilton and what he wants as versus Charles Leclerc. It is always going to be the same at Scuderia Ferrari between two of the best drivers that we've ever seen in F1 history. So too we'll talk about Christian Horner, because Autosport have published an article that gives more light and insight to the circumstance that led to Christian Horner's ultimate dismissal as team principal of Red Bull Racing. In the first instance, though, permit me to go scorched earth, may I? Because Carlos Sainz Jr. has done one of these. Now that translation, the headline is this: Carlos Sainz went on the High Performance podcast with Jake What's-His-Face, former F1 commentator, and had this to say: that I was a good boy last year, that I knew that I was being sacked by Scuderia Ferrari, but what I didn't want to do is turn the team upside down. That's not me. I'm not that way. I'm a professional. I'm an F1 driver. I didn't want to do that. But the truth is that I could have if I'd wanted to. He said those words. Those words came out of Carlos Sainz's mouth. I've listened to the podcast entire, and I can tell you that for a fact. For Gazzetta, to quote him therefore, Gazzetta dello Sport in Italy, one of the go-to publications as far as all things sports, not just F1, for them to quote what he said is factual, Carlos Sainz Jr. So I don't want to hear from Carlos Sainz on Instagram. Now he wants to post up and start speaking with chest. Thanks for the clickbait. From your $1,000 million mansion in Monaco, behave yourself. There is this thing about clickbait. F1 likes to do this. You guys know and understand already that this channel is founded upon my hatred of this us and them mentality. You can come to the races so long as you're going to pay £100,000 for paddock passes et al. You can come so long as you monetize the sport, so long as you buy the merch. There is this us and them mentality. As far as Carlos Sainz, I mean, he gives this interview to Jake and the High Performance podcast. But when last, Carlos Sainz, did he give an interview to the Gazzetta dello Sport or Corriere? When did you speak to them? And that's why, if they're going to earn themselves some bread, they need to go out and put out Instagram posts like this. So how very dare you, Carlos Sainz, talk about clickbait from your bloody ivory tower, your $1 million mansion in Monaco. It really made me angry. And this is coming from somebody that really likes one Carlos Sainz Jr. Every podcast that he gives, I listen to every single word in Spanish or English. It matters not. The Nude Project was a brilliant 1.5 hour podcast from Carlos. I love that he speaks so eloquently. You've heard me talk ad infinitum about the times when Carlos Sainz reminisces about the heady days of when F1 had visceral engines for noise. This is the first time that he got in a V6 engined F1 car that it put goosebumps on his back. You've heard me speak about this. I like Carlos Sainz Jr., but how very dare you, sir, do one of these and turn up your nose in your bloody ivory tower. Oh, thank you for the clickbait. You are a multi-million pound F1 driver. Old media still needs to make itself some money, and that's why you get the bloody Instagram post, because F1 is a closed space. It is yet and still in 2025, July of us and them. Pipe down, Carlos Sainz Jr. Lest you want to see more scorched earth, Cameron. Oh, and by the way, Ferrari have put out upgrades. You know already that they were testing yesterday. Lewis Hamilton got 100 kilometers. So too did Charles Leclerc. The rumor is that they disagree on the angled line of trajectory and travel as far as what that SF25 needs to look like. The context is this: Lewis Hamilton has talked about not having the confidence, stability at the rear that he needs to take high minimum speeds through medium and high speed turns. Why? Because they can't run the car low enough. That car was designed to run super low to the ground, not dissimilar to the W13 of Mercedes in 2022. They can't do it, and Lewis doesn't have the confidence. All except every single race this season, all except from the Chinese Sprint Grand Prix, when they ran it super low and ultimately got disqualified at the altar of excessive plank wear. Now, with a view to run the car lower, they've brought this suspension. You can see the new bits on the left and the old bits on the right. It's more rigid. It allows them to run the car lower, circumnavigating and mitigating for the multitudinous aerodynamic and mechanical travails that come with running the SF25 higher. They now apparently can run it low. But the upshot of this is that Charles Leclerc, if rumours to be believed, disagrees with the line of travel, the design philosophy that he wants to pursue going forward, as versus what Lewis Hamilton wants. Ergo, the question is this going forward: whose team is that? Scuderia Ferrari, the red car with a yellow badge and black prancing horse. Who is the priority? There is no point in prioritising both drivers. You can't run with a diversified portfolio as far as your focus going forward. That's a hiding to nothing. The oldest truism in F1 history. So who do you go with? Do you go with the experiencer Lewis Hamilton, 7-time champion, GOAT settings, first round Hall of Fame? Or do you go with the young, hungry lion in Charles Leclerc, point to point, probably the quickest driver on the grid? That's the decision that they need to make. And all, big decision by the way, and all against the backdrop of a moving target of a team principal. Do they keep Frederick Vasseur or do they sack him off? If indeed they want to keep him, surely throw a contract at him, and they haven't done. This is George Russell et al. Frederick Vasseur's contract, lest we forget, runs out at the end of this year. Historically, when you survey the sporting landscape, if you want to keep somebody in the medium to long term, like a Frederick Vasseur or a George Russell at Mercedes, then you don't allow their contract to wind down into its final year. But I digress. Oh, and by the way, Yuki Tsunoda, chaos merchant. I mean, they always said he was a chaos merchant. Watch any one of the Maximilian Verstappen documentaries on Netflix, Amazon Prime even, and you will understand that the circumstance about Tsunoda, as far as Red Bull's POV, has always been one of chaos merchant. They're always telling him to go and get some training, some additional training, circle the wagons around your mental health. So why don't you go and see this psychologist? In fact, it's part of your contract that you go and see this psychologist. Yuki Tsunoda's lost his phone. I don't even know who loses their phone these days. How do you lose a phone? Yuki Tsunoda has seen you that and raised you this, and he's posted on a completely unrelated topic. If anybody finds a phone while swimming in Lake Como, let me know. Why was Tsunoda-san swimming in Lake Como with a phone? Chaos merchant, Annie. But I digress. Go on then. Mercedes
got a really good.
I'm going to play some clips. James Allen was on the Red Flags podcast, and this is important. James Allen, one of the goatiest commentators to ever have goated, the man who called Lewis Hamilton's maiden championship in 2008, is that Glock with Martin Brundle. Went on the Red Flags podcast, friends of the channel also, and had some things to say. He spoke about Max Verstappen going to Mercedes, potentially Aston Martin too, and the key things, the key drivers that will ultimately tell the tale as far as that decision. Here's the first clip where James Allen talks about Mercedes as a proposition going forward into 2026 and 2027. Roll the clip.
Toto's got a really good engine next year, which is what happened in 2014. The difference is that he's going to have a competitor who's using the same engine as him, which is McLaren, who are currently comfortably the fastest car. So for them to lift themselves up, they're going to have to make a step with next year's chassis side in order to take on McLaren. And McLaren are in a great position because they're using the Mercedes engine, which people think is going to be competitive. But I think the Honda should be competitive as well. From if you look at the nature of the engine, the Honda should be pretty good. So, it's as I say, I don't think Max needs to jump now. The time to be ready to move is the end of 26. That's the moment to be. And if you're George, maybe you could go to Aston Martin now and say, look, I'm being yanked about here, so I can come to you. I'll commit now for 3 years to you. Take it or leave it. You want to do this? And if you're Lawrence, you say, oh, okay, well, let me have a think about that, because it's a longer shot for him to get Max than it is for Toto to get Max. Toto's
techie than techie things. This is the gift that keeps giving as far as the narratives and plot lines, the relevant ones in the weird and wacky world that is F1. Where's Max going? And why should he go there? Is it Aston Martin because of the $1 billion that they're going to throw at him? Because Lawrence Stroll has a Caesar at the gate mentality, that if he wants to colour the car orange, that he can make that decision? Or, I mean, that's what attracted Adrian Newey there. Is it in the old school settings, one of the last types of that operation in Formula One? Or do you go to Mercedes, where, if rumour is to be believed, Mercedes PU has the whip hand. Roll the clip.
If I was advising Max, I would say to him, yes, everybody, around that Silicon Valley in England, they all talk to each other. So the people in Mercedes engines know how good their engine is, and the people in Red Bull engines know how not good their engine is, and they can compare that, and they talk in the pubs in the evening, because they all used to work together, right? And they've all moved between each other many times. It's a small world, and the general feeling is that the Red Bull engine is going to be down a little bit next year. So Max is looking at 24 races where chances are he'll be in a similar situation to where he is today. Maybe even worse, not really able to race with whoever the fastest car is next year. Bear in mind, it's a complete rule change, so we don't know at the moment, even though Lando seems very confident they're going to have a great car next year. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're Toto, you're going to have to go from a situation where you're paying George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, who's doing it for kind of like, pocket change and some meal tokens. You're going to put another $80 to $100 million on your bottom line.
Let me stop James Allen there. I would correct you, sir. It's more than that. If indeed you factor in buyout clause, financial resource, anywhere up to 100 million is Maximilian Verstappen's buyout clause. And if, as at the summer break, he's not in position to null and void his contract because of said buyout clauses, then because of said performance clauses then the buyout clause will be 100 million. And how much are you going to give Maximilian Verstappen per annum in terms of remuneration? Surely anywhere up to 100 million. So in the first year of signing Maximilian Verstappen, I would concur, disagree even, James Allen, legend, friend of the channel. I think the figure that you're looking at, the hit to your operating profits, and so therefore your bottom line, will be negative 200 million. Big red numbers. That's why Ola Kalunius has to rubber stamp this. Don't sulk. Sainz has a career of losing record versus teammate in points and position. Don't sulk. But I love me some Carlos Sainz Jr. Go on, if we're dotting around and going back to subjects, Carlos Sainz's gift is that he brings a rising Carlos Sainz tide, floats all F1 team boats. Do you know what I mean? You've seen the stat that as soon as Carlos Sainz comes historically to a team in the constructors will do one of the. I love me some Carlos Sainz, but how very don't solve. You're making me go scorched earth again. How very dare that dude talk about do one of these. Stop looking through F1 when it does that. Really cheeses me off. Stop looking down your nose at bloody. Do you know what I mean? Old media, new media. It tends to do it to new media, but in this instance, it's old media. Why don't you give them an interview, Carlos Sainz? Do you know what I mean? I understand that your bandwidth is low, but it's only because you rock up on High Performance Podcast once in a blue moon. Why Gazzetta? Why don't you have a word with Gazzetta yourself, and then they can quote you directly? Because you won't do that. You don't do that. You're so keen to do us and them mentality. That's why. To earn a living, to put some food on their table and feed some families. That's why Gazzetta have to put Instagram posts up like that. Clickbait. As if you know. Carlos Sainz, when you're ready to come on the Cameron CC channel and have an interview, just send me an email. Do you know what I mean? But you won't, because it's one of these each and every single time. John, you're a legend. 0427 in New Orleans. Let's go. Headed to work. John says, hello, Issa. Issa, what's going on? Legend of the channel. Emu, good day from Melbourne. Let's go. You guys are legends. Turtle, sending you strength as always. Listen, go on then. Let me play this final. The comparison. A couple more clips from James Allen. The comparison between Horner and Toto. This is an important one because so many have said that Christian Horner goes too hard, races too hard. He would see the line delineating fairness and unfair, sports etiquette and lack thereof, and just step over it. For he was nothing if not a line stepper, and some will criticise him for that. Some loathe Christian Horner for that. But if you're having the conversation under the umbrella heading of performance and maximising for it, therefore, then surely you've got to put some respect on Christian Horner's name. Roll the clip.
Jean Todt arrived. I knew him beforehand when he was at Peugeot in the sports cars. He won Le Mans 24 Hours with Peugeot. He wore a Peugeot shirt. He would go through a brick wall for Peugeot. A few months later, he turns up in a Ferrari shirt. He would go through a brick wall for Ferrari. He would deny everything. He would stand up for them. He would defend Schumacher absolutely to the hilt. He would swap the cars around on the last lap of the Austrian Grand Prix, 5 races into a championship, and say this had to happen and defend that to the hilt. And then guess what? He turns up at the FIA as president wearing an FIA shirt, and he would go through a brick wall for the FIA, and he'd give Ferrari a hard time. That's the way these guys are. Jean Todt arrived. I knew him beforehand.
And that's the way that Christian Horner is, James Allen. I don't think I'm clear. We'll do more Carlos Sainz chat later. I've got more for him, but we've got to run through. Go on and final clip. This is important one. A bit of Max glazing from James Allen. Not me. I'm not going to do it anymore on this channel, or at least I would try and keep it to a minimum. I don't want to get a record. Do you know what I mean? A reputation that precedes me for excessively Max glazing, for being too effusive with my praise of Maximilian Verstappen, foursome five-time champion. By the way, James Allen talks about Maximilian Verstappen and how and when he realised that Mr. Verstappen was just a little bit different from the rest. Roll the clip.
The first time I saw Max, the first time I clocked what made Max special was at Monaco. And I'm sure you know, guys, you can go to, if you've got the right credential, you can go and stand by the swimming pool in Monaco. And you can stand right next to the barriers when they come through the first part, 130 plus miles an hour, right on the limit. And Max's hands on the steering wheel, you could see them. It's like watching a really good quarterback. He just seems to have an extra half second or a second on the ball before he releases the pass. Other quarterbacks just don't have that, and that's what makes them special. They see it, they see the picture, where they're going to send the ball. Max's hands is so fast compared to everybody else. Schumacher had something very similar. And you see it, and you go, okay, I've got it now. And on top of all that, he's got this rock-hard mentality. He's got this dad who's basically bred him for success and is ruthless in the pursuit of success. So now you find yourself in a situation where the boss man, is no longer there. Everybody else is fighting like rats in a sack across the whole business, not just in the race team. And all that Jos cares about is ultra high performance.
Touche, James Allen. I love that analogy about Max having more time on the steering wheel, just that quick with his hands. I heard the analogy compared about Leo Messi. That when Lionel Messi, one of the greatest, if not the greatest footballers to ever put on a pair of football boots, that he plays with more frames. He just seems to have more time than the rest, more bandwidth in which to construct his genius. And I think that goes for the same. You can talk about Lewis as well. You could talk about Michael Schumacher, but the most frequently occurring proponent of that of late is Maximilian Verstappen. Please see as your Exhibit A, Suzuka qualifying, Saudi Arabia, so too the British Grand Prix. Those poles should not have been put. They belonged to Oscar and Lando by dint of the car that they're driving and its durable competitive advantage over the rest of the field. But yet and still, Maximilian Verstappen sees victory from the moles, no jaws of defeat. Go on then. In the final instance, I want to tell you guys about this because it's going to get techier than techie things. Christian Horner. The more that I read, the more that I find out. Every single page that I turn, there is a new twist in that Christian Horner plot. For context, dismissed last week. He was told on Tuesday. He found out on Wednesday morning. Went to Milton Keynes and gave the speech. We've seen that now. What happens next to him? I don't know. Potentially equity. Potentially comes back and leverages Bernie Ecclestone's money and buys himself a minority shareholding in an Alpine. Let's say maybe he comes back with Otmar Safnauer, rumoured to be taking up the 12th entrant on the F1 grid potentially. But conversation is this. Why did he get dismissed in the first instance? Now, some have said that it had all to do with Team Verstappen. Some have talked about the 2% that the Vidra family transferred into an umbrella company in Switzerland. Some have said that they did that so that no longer did they have the power of veto, using which they would push through Christian Horner's tenure, continuing as team principal of Red Bull Racing. There is an Autosport article that lays this out brilliantly. However, I will link it in the description and all of the sources aforementioned, which we cited on today's show. Here's what they say. More than 2.5 years ago, Dietrich Mateschitz passed under the operational leadership of 3 managing directors: Alexander Kirchmeier, he does the finance; Mintzlaff does projects and investments; Franz Waltzerwick does beverages. Red Bull GmbH has flourished despite challenging global economic circumstances. Put on your business cap for a second. Here are their numbers. In 2023, Red Bull's numbers, they surpassed 10 billion euros in revenue for the first time. That's the year after Dietrich Mateschitz passed. In 2024, they surpassed even that to the tune of 10%, 11.2 billion euros. Now, post Matashic's death, he left those guys in charge, right, of the energy drinks company, his empire, and it was always the Charlie Mavija way to default, to delegate all of the runnings of the energy drink company to the aforementioned Mintzlaff, Franz, and so too Alexander Kirchmeier. Now, because they're doing such a gangbusters job with Red Bull Energy Drinks Company and Red Bull Racing is failing, why not get the A team then into operate F1? Now, it was always meant to be delineated, nicely delegated authorities. Christian Horner runs Red Bull Racing, and these guys, Alexander, Oliver and Franz, nailed all of the operations as far as the Red Bull Energy Drinks entity. However, when you have Christian Horner now failing, he said, listen, leave me and Caesar at the gate. The power unit stuff, I'll manage it. Don't do the Porsche thing as Dietrich wanted to. Leave it with me. I harbour aspirations to hold equity. Leave it with me. I've got it. I'll nail it. I'll turn it around. Until last year, it seemed like that was the right decision. But at the altar of some poor low-level decision-making, Checo Perez's 2-year contract, which he didn't deserve, misconduct allegation gate, a plethora of god-tier F1 minds in Wheatley, in Newey, in Marshall, leaving Red Bull over the past 16 to 18 months. Now you have yourself a very different circumstance as far as Red Bull Racing and its ability to deliver performance. Now the question is this. Can you deliver it quickly enough? This is one of time. Can you turn this ship around quickly enough to save the final bastion, the jewel in the crown, Maximilian Verstappen, leaving and going to someone else, one of your competitors, the constructors, in a Mercedes or an Aston Martin? And this is important. I don't think too much people give enough credence to this. At least it's a double whammy. Let's take Adrian Newey. If Adrian Newey goes and sails off into the sunset, as it looked like he might do once upon a time, then that's one thing. You've lost yourself god tier intellectual property right, but nobody else has gained it. If Adrian Newey leaves Red Bull and then goes and joins, I don't know, Aston Martin, that's a double whammy, right? Because not only have you lost, but one of your rivals have gained. In terms of lap time, put simply, it is a ×2, and therein lies the issue as far as the personnel who have left Red Bull Racing. Wheatley's he could have been the bloody team principal, Jonathan Wheatley. He was perfect. He knows what Red Bull looks like. He already has the respect of the team. He was perfect, but the issue was one of timing. Christian Horner very selfishly wanted to hang on to the reins, still hold the Red Bull Racing red pen, and what now? You've lost Jonathan Wheatley, the god tier ES sporting director in F1 currently, to a rival team, and so too with Rob Marshall. He's gone over to McLaren and he's built himself a god tier car, and that's why Charlie Mavija would have been looking left and right and saying, okay, so you know what, I had the 51%, the power of veto. Why don't we do this? Because you guys have been doing such a gangbusters job with the energy drinks arm. Remember, 2023, 10 billion euros in revenue. That rose in 24 to 11.2. That's a 10% increase in revenue in challenging market circumstance. You don't see that, ladies and gentlemen, and only say that to give the credit that the likes of Franz, Alexander and Oliver Mintzlaff deserve as far as their ability to operate. Dietrich Mateschitz knew what he was doing in giving the reins of the energy drinks company to those guys. So then why not, as at July of 2025, start listening to them? If they know how to run an energy drinks company, then surely F1 can't be so complicated, right? If they know how to manage, if they know how to engender sporting or excellence even in that field, then why can't they transfer it across the Formula 1? Is the question that the 51% owner would have been asking. 5 weeks before Christian Horner was dismissed, there was 2% that was transferred over to an umbrella company in Switzerland. Now, the rumour is that that was due to tax purposes. The Autosport article argues that it's something different, that there's been so much chaos over at Red Bull that the Thai owner said, you know what, sometimes we need consensus. It can't just be misconduct allegation gates. Sometimes we need to defer to the guys who have done such a stellar job of running Red Bull energy drinks, because they clearly know that what they're doing. Here's what Autosport says. The decision to place the 2% in the Swiss trust with a mandate from Charlie Mividja. So in effect, the mandate means that in effect, Charlie Mividja still owns the 51%, but this devolves out some of the decision making ever so slightly. Autosport writes, in that case of a deadlock, as far as strategic decisions are concerned, there is now a neutral body in place to provide impartial guidance to the shareholders. Thus, Fides, the umbrella company that owns 2% of Red Bull Energy Drinks, the parent company, could act as the decisive swing vote in situations like a Horner case where shareholder opinions are deadlocked. Ergo, imagine a world where Charlie Mividja still wants to back Christian Horner going forward. Austria, who have done such a sterling job, the Salzburg guys, the Mintzlaffs of this world, who've done such a sterling job managing the energy company to those gangbusters revenue numbers, notwithstanding challenging market circumstance, they want to get rid of Christian Horner. Ergo, you have deadlock. That's when FIDE come in. The 2% is critical. That's where you have an independent party to cast the final vote. It's techier than techie things, but I think that understanding as far as the Christian Horner circumstance is key. Not just for our own salacious, our inquiring minds into all F1 activity salacious, but in determining what happens next with Maximilian Verstappen. If they understand who that dude is and what he means to Red Bull Racing as far as being able to win races and therefore championships, you bet your bottom dollar that they will stop at zero lengths to get that contract over the hill. 2026, 2027. The question on everybody's lips going forward into the summer break is what does Max Verstappen do? Oh, the humanity.